All right, so let's begin. Let's talk about some loan basics. So suppose you borrow $1,200 at an annual interest rate of 12%, and so let's say they're compiling interest every month. So that's 1% per month. How much would you owe in interest? Oh, and I'm sorry. So at the end of 1 month, how much would you owe in interest? Okay, no, I see that I put the bullet points in the correct order. Apologies. Rambling in my own head. So all we have to do to figure out that first bullet is 1% of $1,200. That's 0.01 times 1,200. Which is just $12. All right, so that's that first bullet point. All right, so if I paid only $12, if you paid only this amount, how long would it take you to pay off the loan? And the answer there is you would never pay off the loan. And the reason there is you would be paying $12 a month, but every time you paid it, you would only be paying off the interest, so the principal would still accrue interest, and you'd only be paying it back down to $1,200 perpetually. All right, so how long would it take you to pay off the loan if every month you paid $200 towards the principal? So let's take a look at a little table to do that. So I'm going to make a table where it's the end of the month. We'll have our interest. We'll have the payment. And then new balance. All right, so at the end of month one, we just figured out that we'd have $12 in interest. So if we want to make a payment of $200 towards the principal, we actually have to pay $212. So we pay the $12 interest, then the $200 towards the principal, and then our new balance just becomes $1,000. All right, so we can figure out how much interest we're gonna have to pay on 1,000 at the end of month 2 by multiplying 1,000 times 0.01. So what's 1% of 1,000? Well, that's $10. So because you have a lower balance, you pay less interest because you're only paying interest on your balance. So now we're only charged $10 in interest, therefore our payment only needs to be $210. That's going to pay off our interest and bring our principal down by $200, so that's going to leave my balance at $800. The end of month 3, I'm paying a 1% interest on $800, so that's only $8. So my payment only needs to be $208. And now I've paid my $8 in interest and I've paid down the principal by $200. So I'm at $600. And so you can see this is just going to continue. I'm going to pay down $200 in interest in my principal each month. And the amount of interest I have to pay will get lower every month because my balance is getting lower every month. So this will be at 0 at the end of month 6. And so the answer to this is 6 months. And how much should you pay per month if you wanted to make equal payments instead of different payments every month? Well, what we can figure out is how much we end up paying in interest in total. And you can see that the way we're doing this, the interest comes down by $2 each month. So I would end up paying 12 plus 10 plus 8 plus 6 plus 4 and plus 2 in interest, which is $36, $42. All right. So if you wanted to pay them off equally, knowing that we're going to be paying $1,242 in total, if I divide that by 6, I get $207. So here is your loan payment formula. Again, this is on that formula sheet I gave you. I'll move that into the current module as well. It's an aggregate of all our possible formulas. But you don't really need these as long as you can learn to use TVM Solver. You would only need to do this if you were going to do it by hand. So we're going to use TVM Solver to solve most of these. All right. What you do need to write down is this. So here's our vocab for loan basics. The principal is the amount of money owed at any particular time. An installment loan or an amortized loan is a loan that is paid off with equal regular payments, and the loan term is the time you have to pay back the loan in full. Colin, do you have a question? Or are you just saying I'm ready?
Oh no, I had a question.
Go ahead.
Can you make principal only payments to loans?
No, well, so as you kind of saw in the example we just did, you can, but you would have to calculate out the amount of interest you would need to pay for that month, for that rate, compounding period. So that's not usually what people do. So what we're going to be looking at is something called an amortization table, and that's going to allow you to calculate most people prefer to pay the same amount every month because you want to do things like automate your expenses, right? Like Sanchez was talking about, you want to have your bank account automatically pay off your credit card or something like that. Or if you're paying on a loan, you don't want to have to recalculate what you need to pay every month so that you can pay a certain amount towards the interest. So instead, you can figure that out in equal installments to get the same desired result. And that's what we're going to talk about doing today.
Okay.
All right, so the loan term is the time you have to pay back the loan in full. All right. So as you can see, the amount of an installment loan payment going towards principal and towards interest varies as the loan is paid down. If you're paying equal amounts early in the loan term, the portion going towards interest is pretty high, and that going towards principal is pretty low. Remember, the larger your balance, if you're paying interest on a loan, the larger your balance, the more interest you get charged. And you always pay interest first. So as you pay down that principal, that's a smaller amount to be charged interest on, and therefore more goes towards the principal and less goes towards the interest as the term of the loan proceeds. So let's do an example. Suppose you have a student loan totaling $7,500 when you graduate from college, and the interest rate is 9% annually, and the loan term is 10 years. What are your monthly payments? How much will you pay over the lifetime of the loan, and what is the total interest you will pay on the loan? So I'll give you a second to get the main points of that down. And so what we're going to assume is that all of these loans are going to be monthly. You're going to be paying generally loans monthly so that they also compound monthly. So let's go ahead and get out our TVM solver, our calculator. All right, we can find that in Apps, Finance, TVM Solver. All right. Remember that N is the total number of payments that you're going to be making. So we're paying for 10 years, and we're paying every month. So that's 10 times 12. There you go. So 120 total payments. We have an interest rate of 9%. And the first thing we're going to figure out is what's the total amount. Sorry, what are our monthly payments? All right, so the present value of our loan we owe, so negative $7,500. Payment is what we're going to solve for, so just leave it as is for now. The future value, we want our loan to be 0. So we're trying to pay off the loan. Payments per year is 12. Compounding per year is 12. We're always going to keep the payment period to be at the end. And then we're going to solve for our payment. So I'll do an alpha solve. All right, so my payments are going to be about $95.01 per month. If you're not able to get that to come up in your calculator, make sure you ask now. Let's get the calculator figured out. So we got $95.01 per month. Second question, how much will we pay over the lifetime of the loan? So we can figure this out by the fact that we are paying $95.01 per month, but as I said, we're making 120 payments over the life of the loan. We're making payments for 10 years every month. So that's 120 payments. So if we just multiply our 95.01 by 120, that tells you how much you're paying over the life of the loan. So the total ends up being $11,401.20. Okay. Got that down. Total is $11,401.20. Interest. Well, we can figure out how much total interest we're paying over the life of the loan by looking at what our original principal amount was. It was $7,500. I'll just subtract that from the total I ended up paying over the life of the loan. So that's $11,401.20 minus the original $7,500. And we see that we ended up paying a little over $3,900 in interest alone over the life of that loan, which is a lot. I mean, more than 50% of what the actual loan was, right? We only took out the loan for $7,500. We've ended up paying an additional almost $4,000 in interest. So you can see what even a relatively low interest rate, 9%, does over that span of time in terms of paying interest. So an important thing to remember is paying off loans earlier has a huge impact on the amount of interest that you'll pay over the life of the loan. And you'll have the most impact the earlier you make those payments larger. So remember, as I said, whoever the loaner is, they're getting the most interest from you at the beginning of the life of the loan term. Because at the beginning, before you've made any payments, they have the biggest balance to be able to charge you interest on. They're charging you on the full amount of the loan. But as you begin to make payments towards it, that balance comes down and they have less of a balance to charge you interest on. So if you really want to have an impact, make payments above the minimum payment early on in the life of the loan. So if you're getting a car loan, for example, most car loans don't have penalties for paying early. In fact, you should never be taking a loan that has penalties for paying early because they're just guaranteeing that they're going to make the most possible interest off of you then. So if you have a car loan and you're paying $250 a month and you can afford to pay $300 a month, do that early. That's going to take down the total interest you pay way more than if you are trying to do that later on in the life of the loan. Let's see what would happen to this. All right, so our loan is $95 a month. Let's see what would happen if we just made $5 increments bigger. So let's pay $100 a month instead of $95 a month and see how that impacts our interest. So we can do that real quick in the calculator and the TVM solver. Whoops, apps, finance, TVM solver. And the way I'll do this is I'll say I want to make $100 payments. And I still want my future value to be 0. So what I'm going to solve for is this capital N, which is how many total payments should I be making to get down to 0? All right, so this is like 110.63, so you're going to have to make a little over 110 payments of $100. So right there, just making that extra $5 payment a month, we're saving almost $400 off of in interest on our loan. You only end up paying about $11,000 versus $11,400 just by increasing your monthly payment by, this was technically less than $5, $4.99 a month. So it can have a super severe impact. All right, so let's go back here. So this is an example. This is called an amortization table. And it shows the amount of payment that's being applied to the principal and the amount of the payment that's being applied to the loan. So on the first month, with an APR of 9%, remember the interest that's actually being charged every month is 9 divided by 12. That comes out to 0.75%. They're only charging you 0.75% in interest every month. So after the first month, 0.75% of 7,500 is 56.25. Whenever you pay on a loan, the first thing that gets paid is the interest you owe, and then whatever is left over goes towards the principal. So after month 1, the first $56.25 goes towards your principal, and then the rest of that $95 payment, which was $38.76, goes towards your principal. I'm sorry, I think I said that backwards. The first $56.25 goes towards your interest. The remaining $38.76 goes towards your principal, and then your remaining principal is that $7,500 minus that $38.76. After month 2, they only have $7,461 to charge you interest on. So you can see that the interest slowly comes down. So month 2, you're only paying $55.96 in interest, and that means $39.05 in principal. So as your principal comes down, your interest comes down, and your payments shift from paying more towards your interest to paying more towards your principal eventually over the life of your loan. All right, credit cards. Credit cards are slightly different than an installment loan because usually an installment loan is a contract where you're agreeing to pay the loan over a certain period of time. So think about a car loan. Usually you get car loans in 4 or 5 or 6 year terms. And like I said, most car loans, you don't have a pay early penalty. You shouldn't. So the contract is only saying you must pay it off in this amount of time, and here's the minimum payment you must make each month. You can pay it off quicker and therefore have to pay less in interest. But a credit card is a little different because you're not usually required to pay off your balance in any set period of time. Usually a minimum monthly payment is required. And that'll cover all the interest but very little principal. And that's so that they can keep your principal as high as possible. They sort of want to keep you on that line, just barely paying down the principal so that they're charging you more interest over time. And so with that in mind, it can take a really long amount of time to pay off a credit card if you only make minimum payments. And the longer it takes to pay something off, the more interest you pay in the long run. All right, so let's do a credit card example. Suppose you have a credit card balance of $2,300 with an annual interest rate of 21%. This is pretty high for a credit card, but not unheard of, especially for people your age who are maybe just turning 18 and don't have credit. They're gonna charge you high interest rates until you establish credit. So you decide to pay off your balance over 1 year. How much will you need to pay each month? And assume you will make no further credit card purchases. All right. So we're going to go into our calculator. We're going to do this in TVM Solver. Remember when we use TVM Solver? Totally fine with it. But like on a quiz or a test, you need to notate what your inputs are for me. So in this case, N, the number of payments we're going to make is 12. The interest rate is 21%. My present value will input as 2,300. The payment is what we're going to solve for. The future value we want to be 0. And then we'll have, payment per year and compounding per year. Since we're making monthly payments, those are both 12. All right, so let's go in and solve for that. So 12, since we're paying this off in a year. I'll do alpha solve. All right, so I need to make payments of $214.16. Oh, whoops, I just realized I wasn't sharing that with you. Apologies. That's what I entered, and then I did alpha solve on payment, and I got $214.16. All right, so that's how much I'll have to pay each month to pay it off in a year. Let's figure out what the total cost would end up being. Well, I'm making that payment 12 times, so it's just going to be 12 times my $214.16. And that's $25.69.92. So that means in interest, you're making that total minus what your original principal was, so $2,300. So if you pay it off in a year, you wind up paying $269.92 in interest. All right, let's jump to mortgages. So mortgages is just a home loan. So it's an installment loans for buying a house. It just gets its own name because they're very popular. Usually to buy a home, you'll have to make some sort of a down payment, and that's usually a percentage of what the loan will be. And closing costs are fees that you have to pay in order to be given the loan. So they generally will include appraisal. So you have to have somebody from the government come out and basically say, yes, this house is worth what you're buying it for. It's called appraisal. And you have to do a credit check. That's like a $50 thing. And then there are other fees charged as points, where each point is 1% of the loan amount. Buying a house is a nightmare. Closing usually takes 30 days, and you're not guaranteed to get the house that you're going to try and pay for. And there's like so many things that could go wrong. And if even one of them does, then you have to start all over. And there's tons of fees that just come out of nowhere. And then there's the math behind the mortgage itself, which we're about to do. You get to see how much you actually pay for like a $300 house, a $300,000 house over the course of a 30-year loan. And it ends up being usually around double what the house was originally worth. So, two types of mortgages. A fixed rate mortgage is one in which the interest rate is guaranteed not to change over the life of the loan. An adjustable rate mortgage is one where interest rates change based on the prevailing rates. And so that can change based on how the economy is doing. That one's a little riskier. All right, I've been talking. Okay, let's evaluate a couple of options here. Great Bank offers a $100,000 30-year 5% fixed rate loan with closing costs of $500 plus 1 point. Big Bank offers a lower rate at 4.75% on a 30-year loan, but with closing costs of $1,000 plus 2 points. So evaluate the options. So let's see. Let's look at the Great Bank option first. So let's see what the house would cost if we used Great Bank. So we're making a 30-year loan. So N equals 30. You have to pay every month times 12. All right, your interest rate is going to be 5%. Your present value is going to be $100,000. The payment is what we're going to solve for. The future value, we want it to be 0. And payments per year, compounding per year, is 12. Okay. So again, N is 30 times 12, so you end up making 360 payments on this. 5% interest rate, present value $100,000. Future value 0. This is what I want to solve for. So alpha, enter. All right. So my monthly mortgage ends up being $536.82. So we can use that information, to figure out what we have to pay in total. So total cost is going to be that $536.82 times the number of payments we're going to make in total, which was 360 over the life of the loan, right? All right, but I also want to add to that closing costs. So plus, I have closing costs of $500 plus 1 point. So that's 1% of $100,000. All right, that'll give me the total cost of my house when all is said and done through Great Bank. So let's go ahead and pop that into the calculator. There we go. So the house ends up costing me $194,755.20 in total if I go with Great Bank. All right, let's evaluate Big Bank. Same value for N. We're going to do 30 times 12, which is 360 for my total number of payments. My interest rate for Big Bank is a little lower. It's 4.75. Present value, still the same, $100,000. Payment, that's what we'll solve for. Future value, 0. Payments per year, 12. Compounding per year, 12. All right. So I'm going to change my interest rate to 4.75. And then I'll do an alpha solve on payment. All right. It's $521.65 per month. All right, so now let's figure out how much my total cost is going to be when all is said and done. So I'm going to do the 521.65. I have to make that 360 times. And then closing costs, let's see, $1,000. And they said plus 2 points, so that's plus 2% of the loan in total, 2% of 100,000. All right, so that goes into my calculator. All right, so I end up with $197.94. All right, so the better bank probably to go with is Big Bank. Even though they have higher closing costs, you end up with a lower monthly payment and a lower overall cost through the life of your loan term. But you can see buying a house is rough to look at the numbers in the long run because, number one, you're not going to buy a house for $100,000 unless you want to live in, like, I don't know, Blythe, Arizona, or Yuma in like a one-bedroom condo. $100,000 is not feasible, but even on a balance that small for a house, you can see it almost doubles just in interest over the life of the loan. All right, so with that in mind, it's very important to remember that the way you pay off an installment loan, if the pink is my principal and the blue is what I'm paying in interest, at the beginning, whenever I'm making payments, let's say of $537 at the beginning, most of that $537 is going towards interest and very little of it is going towards principal. Now, anything you pay over that $537 goes directly towards principal. And any principal you can pay down, they don't get to charge you on interest next month, which is why if you're trying to pay a loan down quickly, it's much more important to pay more early on than it is to pay more at the end of the life of the loan. Because at the end of the life, there's already very little interest that you're paying. You're paying mostly on the principal. So you'll have the greatest impact of making higher payments if you do it on earlier on in the life of the loan. Naomi?
This is just pertinent to mortgages. So could an issuer of a mortgage charge you for something without you knowing prior to getting that charge, or do they have to disclose all the charges beforehand?
They have to disclose everything, and that's something that came about because of the 2008 crash. But now, so literally, it's a contract that's like thicker than the textbook that we're using. So it's like literally something like this many pages. They have to go through every page with you, page by page, flip it over, explain to you what that is saying, and then have you sign off on it. It's the worst. And that's like that's on your they call it closing day. So, no, they have to explain. I don't know how good of a job that does though, because the language is so financial, and it ends up being such a long process. You're in there for hours on end that it like disincentivizes, paying attention. So I don't know. I guess you just have to muscle up for that amount of time and really pay close attention. But no, they can't sneak anything by you, Naomi, in terms of like closing costs or anything like that. All right. You have a choice between a 30-year fixed rate loan at 4% and an adjustable rate mortgage with a first-year rate of 3%. Neglecting compounding and changes in principal, estimate your monthly savings with the adjustable rate mortgage during the first year on a $100,000 loan. Suppose that adjustable rate mortgage rises to 5% by the third year. How will your payments be affected? All right, and this is our last one. So what I'm going to do is take a look at what our first year payment would be at a 4% loan and on a 3% loan. We'll just do that using TVM Solver. So it's a $100,000 loan. And this is a 30-year mortgage, so we're still making 360 payments. That's still 12 times 30. And let's say 4%. Want to pay it down to 0. Let's go ahead and do an alpha solve. All right. So I'll just make a note. On my 4% loan, I'm going to make payments of $477.42. And they want to know over the course of a year how much I'll save. So I'll do times 12. All right, so 57.2904. All right, and I'm just making a note of that. And then our 3% loan, let's see. So all I want to do is go back into my time value money solver. I'm going to change my interest to 3, and I'm going to resolve for payment. So that's $421.60. I'll multiply that by 12 to figure out what I would pay over the first month. All right, so 50, 59, 20. So over the course of 1 year, you'd be saving almost $700, 57, 29, 04 minus the 50, 59, 20. So 669.84. Okay, but the problem with that is if it's an adjustable rate mortgage, usually what they'll do is give it your first couple years at a certain percent guaranteed, and then the remaining years your interest rate will be based off of the federal interest rate, which could adjust. And so it could go up to 5% the third year, which for the 3% loan you're paying $421.60 a month. If it goes up to 5%, you end up paying $536 per month. So your mortgage goes up by over $100, like $115, which could be that's $115 that you now have to spend every month that you didn't before. So that could be a pretty severe impact.